Hi everyone, Nikki here. Welcome to today's video, editing fonts for better cuts in Silhouette Studio. I made this vinyl decal a few years ago and it's held up really well, but recently I popped the jar in the dishwasher instead of washing it by hand, which I would usually do. As you can see, the top of the A lifted slightly and it got me thinking, was it the adhesive or could the design itself have been more cut friendly? The top of the A is quite thin and doesn't really have anything else to hang on to. So I started wondering, how could I edit this font to create a decal that holds up better long term? In this video, I'll show you how to tweak fonts in Silhouette Studio for cleaner cuts, stronger connections and better results, whether you're labeling a jar or designing a layered decal. These tips can also be used with regular cut files, it's not limited to fonts. So let's go over to Silhouette Studio and get started. So we have a nice clean screen to work on. I've turned off my cutting mat and I've set the media size to 24 by 24. And even though I have the business edition of Silhouette Studio, I'm using the basic edition so anyone can follow along. To start, grab the text tool and let's type the word sugar. And we'll make it nice and big so that everyone can see it on the screen. And just centre it there. Then open up the textile panel to choose our font. You can either type the name at the top, but we'll pick George from our frequently used list. And then we'll go down to the bottom where we can do some adjustment of our spacing. I'll click it down here to 90%, but I think that's still a little bit close in some areas. But I know 93% works well, so I'll choose that here. It still looks a bit uneven, so I'll ungroup the letters. Now each one can be selected individually. You'll see a box is now around each character. Let's zoom in on the A, as that's the one we're going to be concentrating on. And when we double click it, it'll bring up nodes, and these points are what tells your cutting machine where to cut. And they can be adjusted. So if we drag down here on this section, we can then pull down and make it wider. Now I'll adjust the spacing between the R and the A so they're closer together. Then we can move them together closer to the G. You don't have to do it this way, but I find it helps with visualizing how it's going to look. If I want to weld the A to the G as it is currently, I can move it over, but I don't really think that looks particularly nice. So we will undo that and let's make another change to the nodes. So I'll double click again to bring up the nodes and then I'll click within it, which then adds another node, and we can drag it and position it, and then we can play around with the surrounding nodes until we've got something that we like. So you can take your time adjusting things. And don't forget, you can always just undo if needed. And turning on the grid can help too. Before welding, if we select our letters and then go up to fill, we can then look to see what the final result is going to be. And check we're happy with it. So I'll just then weld it. And you might now notice that the bottom of the G is now a separate piece as it has its own box around it, which isn't a problem. And now the top of the G and the A are one single piece. We could also make some adjustments to the U and make this bottom section slightly wider. And if we hold down the Shift key whilst we move it, then it will keep it moving in a straight line. But if we go over to the S and to move it, we don't hold down the Shift key, you'll see we've got a lot more flexibility on how we can move those nodes around. And again here, this is where if we turn the grid on, it would help us with spacing. So you can obviously play around with the nodes as much as you want. Always make use of the undo button if something's not quite right. You might also want to resize the inner shapes of the A and the G, and these are called the counters. Double clicking brings up the nodes again, but doing it this way can be rather a tricky way to do edit. So instead, what we'll do is we'll select them and we will select release compound path. Now don't panic, just go up to the fill and turn that off, and then you can see everything more clearly. And now these centre parts are individual objects that can be resized as you want them, and then you can reposition where you want. And we'll do the same with the A here and make that smaller and just move it a little bit. And then we'll select it again, including the bottom of the G, and we will make compound path. So it's now all one piece. Now we can select the S and just nudge that over a little bit. And everything else looks fine, so we'll select it all and we'll go to group. And now you double click on it and you'll see the nodes don't appear, so you can't make any edits. And we'll fill that in, and that's our final font. With everything here is one piece, and now it's ready to cut. So that's one way that you can alter a font, but also you might find that you've got a font or even a design that doesn't cut cleanly no matter how you adjust your cutting settings. And this could be due to how it was actually digitized in the first place. There may be extra nodes in it, or it could just be very fine and fiddly. But there are a couple of ways that we can improve the cut and make weeding easier, which I think we all would love. I'll start with a new example. We will select our word, we'll just do hand, and we'll use the font Queasley because it's quite a fine, thin font. And as we enlarge it, you will see that some of the letters are already overlapped. Now that's fine, you just have to remember to weld it before you cut the design, so you don't end up with lots of tiny pieces. There's also a stray little node there, and again your Cameo will try and cut that. So we need to clear that up. And the easiest way to do that, I find, is to use the offset feature. First we'll fill the letters, as empty outlines can be hard to select and move. We can then select our word and go over to the offset. And if we set the offset amount to 0, then it will give us an outline directly on top of the original. I'll hit apply and then go over and click on the purple fill, and we can drag away the original, which leaves us with a brand new copy. The little stray node has gone, and the letters that were overlapping are now welded together. And I can now delete the original as I don't need that anymore. Double clicking to bring up the nodes does show us that there's quite a lot, but we can hit simplify to tidy it up, and that will give us a smoother cut. And as the H is separate, which is due to the spacing of the characters, we'll select it and group it, and then we'll fill it again. And what colour you select really doesn't make any difference whatsoever. We'll do an offset again, just to point out it doesn't matter whether you pick it from the top menu or the side one. It's just if the word isn't selected, the top menu isn't active. Anyway, this time we will add a small offset of 0.005. And what that's going to do is just give us a very slightly thicker font, which can help you if you've been having trouble weeding it. So have a play around with different fonts and different designs and see what works best. I often add small offsets to make tricky designs much easier to weed, or I'll release the compound path to adjust or remove certain elements. So if you've been through all the settings with your cutting machine and nothing's working, then take it back to basics and look at the design and see if you can make any edits there. I hope this video has been helpful, and thank you for hanging out with us here on the Penguin and the Bee YouTube channel. I've got lots more videos planned, so please give us a like, subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when new uploads go live.